Well, I don't know about you, but I learned the value of trade in elementary school. I didn't like math, but my best friend did, and she was good at it. I was good in writing, but she wasn't. So she helped me with my math, and I helped her with writing. We both came out ahead, so it was a good trade. Iowa farmers have long known the value of a good trade. 150 years ago, Iowa farmers traded pigs in town for store credit to get something else they needed on the farm. Today, trade still matters. Iowa pigs, or we should say Iowa pork, is important in relationships and commerce around the world. Did you know that exports of pork and pork-related products support around 110,000 jobs in this country? Iowa farmers get $62 more for each pig they raise because of that trade or exports. And the income farmers get, they spend in our Iowa communities. Our communities rely on trade with the world. Hi, I'm Lori Johns. In this episode of ChopTalk, we'll hear about the importance of trade from very different perspectives. One, Senior Vice President John Hinters with the U.S. Meat Export Federation. He trades Iowa pork. And the other, Farmer Ben Bader, raises Iowa pork. I caught up with both of them at the recent World Pork Expo in Des Moines. So, let's begin. I am here with a guy whose work touches all around the world. Well, nice to meet you, John.
Well, nice to meet you, Lori. I think it's pretty exciting when you think about where we are today in the great state of Iowa, the agricultural world. You know, here's the mecca for, all the sustainable foods that we share around the world. Our corn, our hogs, our cattle, our soybeans. What a great place to be in the midst of this summer.
Oh, most definitely. And World Pork Expo does work with so many international groups as well, right? I mean, you look at the movement of Iowa-raised pork and what markets it goes to. And you yourself grew up on an Iowa pig farm. People may not realize that.
My roots are in Iowa, in Carroll County, Iowa. Grew up in a little town by Halber, and our family's still involved with production agriculture.
So when you're talking about what Iowa pork farmers do and the hard work they do to raise the animals and get it ready for the food chain, you certainly have experience. You have that background. You know it.
I have the background. I mean, every day, these animals need to be fed. Just the work ethic of a pork producer, whether you're in Halber, Iowa, or you're in Oklahoma or North Carolina. These individuals get up every day and care for the livestock. And I think, if I were to share one message with our consumers, we do such a good job in taking care of our livestock. It's our livelihood. It's the business that we enjoy, and those animals provide us with great nutrition and great protein that we're able to sustain and stay healthy with.
And so too, it's like the whole world is thinking, well, Iowans love pork. They like their bacon. They like their pork loin. They like their pork chops. Big, huge, It's not just Iowa, though. The pigs that are raised here aren't just for Iowans, because we raise a heck of a lot of pigs.
And when you think about it, we used to be a net importer of pork. You go back, well over 25 years ago, in the early 90s, net importer. But right now, we're so good at what we do. We have the natural resources, the corn, the soybeans, where we can raise hogs. We actually raise enough pigs for sharing around the world. 30% of what we raise here domestically ultimately ends up in the mouths of people around the world. So it's a great example of how we in production agriculture in the pork industry are able to share products with consumers in Asia and consumers in Latin America and consumers all over the world. In fact, we share pork with over 80 different countries.
So they probably like the same type of pork that we like, the same cuts, but it goes well beyond that. When you think of like China, for example, I know China, tons of people and import, they like our pork, don't they?
They love our pork. Here's the situation. Many of these different countries, they have different cuisines, different cultures. When you look at the meat industry, the way we eat meat here domestically, fork, knife. But when you look at Asia, it's a lot of slicing and dicing, chopsticks over better rice, some type of a sauce. So for the most part, we have people from the Meat Export Federation that work in country. Our offices are strategically located in 18 different locations around the world with a staff of 100 people. Wow. Even though we are headquartered in Denver, Colorado, a majority of our people are outside the United States, working daily 24/7 to promote U.S. pork. The trade is so important. When you look at just on the value of a hog, close to $60 of that hog is just due to trade. Ultimately, at the end of the day, there's reasons for that. There's a demand factor, and that demand, a good portion of that is due to trade, due to the international work that our state and national pork organizations are doing, keeping these markets open for U.S. pork. And when you're able to keep that product flowing, ultimately, at the end of the day, it's going to allow people raising those hogs to gain a profit. And I think that's very important. Be able to raise a family in the community, be able to support their schools, their churches, their stores, retail, and keep rural America thriving.
Well, we should think of that because, after all, we are the world. It's all connected. I mean, we've learned that in this last year that was so tumultuous for so many people. Other people matter. The globe, what's happening around the globe, it does matter, and that trade matters. What is the biggest importer of Iowa pork? What countries? And what are they like? What are they eating?
Well, when you look at from a trade standpoint, you cannot ignore about 5 countries. I mean, these are big market movers: China, Japan, Mexico, Korea, and Canada. These countries purchase a lot of U.S. pork, and at the end of the day, they are not able to sustain their own pork production in these countries. So, for example, in Latin America, we'll look at Bogota, Colombia, or the Colombian market. They're only able to produce about 70% of what they need. So who's going to fill that gap? Their consumption has grown. As incomes rise in these countries, they want to add protein to the starches. So you're seeing more and more protein added into the overall diets of many of these consumers. If you look at South Korea and you go back 40 years ago, the consumers, they were at about 10 pounds of protein in a given month and about 500 pounds of starch. Cornstarch, rice, what have you. Fast forward to 2021, and we're well over 100 pounds of protein in that market.
And I remember just a few short years ago, my daughter visited China as part of her Mandarin class. Their family that was hosting them was very proud of the fact that they could serve pork. That was a sign of success, of affluence, that you are serving your guests pork. You have pork. That was a big deal.
Certainly is. And, China, you look at that market, and 1.3 billion people, consumers in the China region. You take about half of those individuals, they have considerable wealth now. So they're eating higher on the food chain. There's also the other half. I just read this the other day. There's 600 million individuals in China that make less than $140 per month. So that's $5 roughly a day and so forth. So they got to make their budget last. So if you can provide them with good protein, good pork, some of the pork variety meats that are great and edible, pork liver. That's a product consumed. Some of the variety meats are consumed around the world. There's tongues, there's pork, they call it trotters, the pork feet. These are considered delicacies in many of the markets, and prepared right, they're tremendous protein. It's chefs do a lot with this, so that's what we constantly work with from the U.S. meat export side of things, working with the chefs in these different countries. Mexico is a tremendous market for U.S. processed hams. They'll go into hot dogs. They'll go into products into the Mexico market. But Mexico's a key success for the United States pork industries. We've had a lot of producers, farmers, pork producers from the state of Iowa take missions into these international countries, and they talk about their production. They talk about what they do and the products that they serve.
Hearing about how pork is raised by the people who raise it lends a whole new level of credibility to folks around the world who want to buy our pork. I caught up with one of those young family farmers at the recent World Pork Expo. He knows trade is important to us all, even if we don't raise pigs. I'm here with Ben Bader from Jessup, a multi-generation pig farmer. And so you've been pig farming how long now, Ben?
I've been farming for about 15 years now with my dad. So Dad and Mom and myself and my wife, along with our 3 daughters, we've been raising pigs here on the multi-generational family farm that my grandpa bought in 1957. And it's been a great way of life.
I know that you raise pigs not just for obviously your family or even for Iowa, but for export. And pork export is a big deal. You've seen that firsthand, though, haven't you?
Yeah, it's a great way of life, raising hogs and corn, soybeans here in Iowa, supporting my family and Iowa, but also exports. I've traveled throughout the world a little bit, different countries, and Iowa pork is a very recognizable brand worldwide. And when people find out that you farm in the Midwest, and specifically Iowa, they get excited, their eyes light up, and they want to talk to you about the hogs and the corn, soybeans.
But it is interesting to hear that when you're traveling internationally, I'm an Iowa pig farmer. Oh, you probably get a hug.
Yeah. No, I think U.S. products in general, but specifically agricultural products, have a good name when they got that U.S. stamp on them, and Iowa pork is no different.
Well, tell me what types of countries, or what was something that struck you in particular? I'm not sure how many places you've been or what you've seen, but they like different cuts. It's not just all about bacon and pork chops over there.
Yeah, I haven't been to all countries, but I know, every country has their specific taste, which is great. It makes us able to use every part of the hog and all the products.
That's kind of neat. Well, what are the questions you get from folks when you're traveling and they find out, you're there as an Iowa pig farmer and you're talking about the way you raise pigs and helping to build some confidence in some of those markets with some of the consumers. But what are some of the questions they have for you when you're traveling?
If you're talking to the general public over there, they're just more interested in your family, more interested in how you make a living with a family farm. There's certain people that'll ask, what does that pig eat? And as far as sustainability, we like to talk to in the pork industry and how we're able to utilize all the pork products like we were just talking about, or utilize the waste to produce next year's corn crop to feed the hogs for the next year. So, sustainability is a big thing that I like to talk about as far as pork production.
Well, they probably don't realize that in addition to just raising the pigs, you also grow the food they eat. That you're a corn and soybean farmer in addition to that, that even blows the minds of some Iowans too, let me just say.
Yeah, obviously that gives Iowa a distinct advantage over anybody else, being able to have the ground to produce all the feed that we need for the livestock in Iowa. So it keeps all that money right at home, which is great.
So what's the one thing you want Iowa consumers, people listening to us right now, what's the one thing you want them to understand about pork trade? Why these other markets matter?
Yeah. Well, pork trade, obviously, as we're able to export as Iowa producers, that brings economic stability into Iowa more than any other product. We export a lot of pork, and we rely on those exports to remain sustainable here in our family farms in Iowa. The one thing I guess I would add is family farmers in Iowa pride themselves on sustainability, and I believe that every farmer in Iowa is determined to make the environment better, and livestock production is no different. And the modern facilities that are used are so much better than what we've done in the past for the well-being of the animal and for the environment, and we continue to make improvements in that area.
Ben's right. Sustainability and trade does matter here at home and around the world. If we've learned one thing this year, it's that we live in a global economy. Our health, our food, what we buy, what we sell, what we need depends on us all working together. Because let's face it, we all need each other, now more than ever. Up next, something you can really sink your teeth into. Part road trip, part culinary feast, it's an unapologetic all-out salute to Iowa's beloved pork tenderloin sandwich. I'm Lori Johns. Come along with me for summertime fun on the Tenderloin Trail on the next Chop Talk.